think it started as a concept really with a headline on the front page of the New York Times. A woman had been detained by the Chinese police in Lhasa, capital of Tibet. Julia Elliott, my niece, I knew was in that region studying Tibetan culture, and it occurred to me she might know the woman who had been detained by the police. And of course it turned out it was Julia who had been detained by the police. Obviously that sort of personal fact of Julia being arrested got me very interested and concerned about what was going on in Tibet. In talking to her and learning more about the situation, it seemed like there was the possibility that making a film might in some way help the situation of the Tibetan people. And so that was really the germ of the idea. It really blossomed, I think, when I started talking to Julia and to her boyfriend at the time, Tutan Sering.
A lot of the stories in the film are actually sort of based on different people's life that I've come across, and Julia has come across, and Paul has his own part of stories. And for me, it was just like hanging out in Lhasa or Dharamsala, or meeting young Tibetans and what their lives are like today in India or Nepal, or especially inside Tibet. Not only the youngsters, but also the elders living and coping with the whole so-called the development, the new good things that the Chinese government claim that they're doing for the Tibetan people.
At the same time that we were shooting Windhorse in the fall of '96, there were two other much bigger budget films being made on Tibetan subject matter. One of them was Martin Scorsese's film Kundun, and the other was the Brad Pitt film 7 Years in Tibet. You had these three films coming out about the same time, and I think really raised an awareness of the history of Tibet, the dilemma, the cultural and political dilemma that Tibetans have faced over the last several decades, and in the case of our film, really brought the issue up to date. The other two were more historical films, but to see all three of them, I think it really would give viewers in the West, and did give viewers in the West, a sense of what was going on, what had been going on in Tibet, and what was going on today, and also what might be done about it.
Windhorse was really useful in terms of bringing to light the different tactics that the Chinese government uses inside Tibet. The informers, like the monk who was the informer, the most unlikely informer on the family. The surveillance that we've all heard about, and tourists and others who've returned to Tibet have seen, the surveillance cameras that monitor everybody's movements. Also, of course, the torture, the abuse to try and deter these people who've spoken out. Even the subtle policies of the Chinese government to make sure that pool halls and alcohol and cigarettes are available en masse and in plenty.
The most important thing was to reach out to the Tibetan communities, especially the younger generations, because many times, again, of course, we all know we are Tibetan, but a lot of my generation at the time in early mid-90s or early 90s, many of them, they've never seen Tibet, and that was really important, not to just hear what is happening, but to see visually.
The situation inside Tibet is not black and white, it's complex. There are many layers to the oppression, many layers to the suffering. Young Tibetans who've been grown up outside Tibet understand a different kind of sadness in terms of families being divided and split up. I think here Windhorse is an incredible story of a family inside Tibet being divided even though they are physically together. They are being divided based on age and opportunity and based on the decisions that they make day to day, whether they will work with or whether they want to work against the Chinese occupiers.
Windhorse was one of the first digital features, maybe the first film to be shot with a 3-chip digital camera and later transferred to 35 millimeter for theatrical release. Interestingly, the reason we did it was related to the clandestine nature of the filming. We had to look like tourists, and so it was important that we use a prosumer camera or a high-end consumer camera inside Tibet so that we could maintain that image of being, amateur video makers. So the idea was to do a lot of exterior shooting in Lhasa, and also we had the idea of bringing 2 of our actors into Lhasa so that we could actually get scenes of them walking through the streets, going to the Potala, in the Jokang Temple, etc. So we were able to create sort of a documentary reality for the characters. So then we took that footage from Lhasa, especially the documentary footage, and we combined it with dramatic scenes or narrative scenes, particularly using dialogue and a lot of the interior scenes filmed in Kathmandu. I think everybody understands that it would be impossible for us as filmmakers to work inside Tibet. What a lot of people don't realize, and certainly I didn't realize going into it, was that it wasn't all that easy to work in Nepal, in Kathmandu. The reason is the Nepali government is very nervous about the political activities of Tibetans because they're right on the border with China. They do not want to antagonize the Chinese Communist government by allowing Tibetan political activities, anti-Chinese political activities.
Unlike Kundun and 7 Years, we really couldn't advertise or tell people that, come, we're doing casting for Windhorse, because this project was very sensitive because A, we're shooting in Tibet, B, we're shooting in Kathmandu. So we really had to be really quiet about it, and it was word of mouth through families and friends that we gathered all these talents.
We launched into this knowing that the cast, basically, of Tibetans would not be professional actors. It was tricky. There were problems, and I remember thinking the first day of shooting that maybe it was a really bad idea, but we found a way of working, and rather than it being a problem, it actually became a huge advantage. There were many, many days when, in working with the story, we found that the Tibetans working with us in those roles, their real life emerged. In other words, their genuine emotions about these issues, about the situation, about the characters and the story actually came to the surface and sort of blasted away the artificial filming situation. So there were many, many days when we filmed scenes where people would break into tears. I hadn't even asked for tears, but the emotions were so spontaneous and so deeply felt by the people playing these roles that we were constantly, it was like the best of method acting, where you're looking for real emotion. I mean, this was real emotion on the part of these actors.
Acting or any performing arts, I think talent is very important. Either you have it or you don't. So I don't believe in professional or non-professional actor, because a lot of people who are so natural, they don't really need that knowledge or the training behind them. Many of them just started talking and acting. They were so real, like they were trained actors.
But meanwhile, also I feel like I'm not good enough. But I promise myself, so okay, I'm going to do my best. Let other people know what's going on in Tibet.
The scene when Pema is dying, and when she dies with Momola, Amala, in the room, nobody had to explain them that scene because it was such a personal story for them.
The final day of shooting was the day that we filmed the bar core scene. This was a scene that in the final film is actually a combination of footage taken in the actual bar core, which is the marketplace around the Jokong Temple in the center of Lhasa, and probably about maybe a 50 or 60 foot long set that we created in Kathmandu, an exterior set to look like the bar core. And we were able to shoot footage in Kathmandu, close-ups and medium shots of the nuns, and match that footage with scenes shot in the actual bar core. So you really get, I think, a pretty convincing depiction of this moment when these two nuns, while walking through the bar core, begin to protest and demonstrate against the Chinese government.
Top G14, these are the nuns that belonged to nunnery in and around Lhasa, who had participated in non-violent protests against Chinese government. Most of those protests occurred exactly like in Windhorse, in and around Bako, which literally lasted at the most couple of minutes, and and taken into prison. The Tibet movement, such as Students for Free Tibet, have lobbied, petitioned, protested against Chinese consulates or embassies in and around the world, and raised the voice for them. And so just in 2004, the last Top G14 was released, and some of them are now here with us in the US and working with us.
Things have changed significantly with the way that the Chinese government treats Tibetan political prisoners. And this is completely due to international pressure and scrutiny on the Beijing government and their actions inside of Tibet. Now, when I say this, it's not that there aren't Tibetan political prisoners anymore. The Chinese government counts them differently. Some people just disappear. Some people are charged with criminal activities when actually they were political.
And the political situation today in Lhasa is more severe, and there's more kind of exercise in terms of re-education, and even in nunneries and monasteries, there is now permanent Chinese officials stationed 24/7, looking and observing the activities, be that be just simple as monks and nuns praying.
The sad thing is like I cannot able to go back to Tibet. I got American citizenship, I think 2 years ago. But I heard my friends and especially my mom, she doesn't really want. They want me to go back, but they don't want me, end up in the jail or something. So it's the only sad thing. But there's lots of touching things. Like I always get some present from Tibet. One time I got a bodala made by like those nuns use like needles. I made whole bodala. It's a huge, big one. I'm sure they smell lots of times. And my mom says the bodala is got from jail. They made the bodala in the jail.
One of the highlights of our filming process was shooting what would eventually become the opening and closing of the film, which is set in a small village high in the Himalaya mountains. We filmed in Mustang, which is a region along the Nepali-Tibetan border. We had to take a couple of flights, land on a little landing strip in a little town called Jumsun, and then actually trek up about, so it was probably a 4 or 5 hour trek up to a small village called Lupra. It was really a thrill. We took a small core group of the crew up with us and a few of the actors to create these scenes in this little village. It's about probably 12,500 feet up in the Himalayas. Incredibly beautiful, a picturesque village. And we were able to create there this amazing image of a Tibetan village.
Just to see the dynamic of the crew that came together and how we worked as a team, the producer, she's running all over the place, like mopping the floor. There's no such things as like ego or like, this is my job, this is my department. That happens in film production, like, or else I'm not going to touch anything. Everyone was all over the place and helping each other, and there was no rest. Literally, there was no rest until we say, okay, wrap. Everyone was pretty much at the location or back at the hotel cooking, making lunch or dinner, or like going around the Kathmandu trying to find some props and things. So that was my favorite part of it.
Because if everyone believe in the project and everybody try their best, nothing can fail. Even you have the big budget, if people have their ego, if they don't get along with anyone, then it's not going to work. And in this film, I think everyone get along so well, everybody believe in the film, everybody put in their best. I think that's already a great success.
I mean, whatever strengths there are to the film are rooted in that collaboration and that connection, because that's the connection that makes the film authentic, that gives it its integrity. And without that, it would have been just another film from a Western perspective. I mean, there are elements that's true, certainly, and it was made in many respects, so it would work in the West, and so it would appeal to Westerners. But I do think that through this collaboration with the Tibetan community, we were able to give a little bit more of an inside perspective. And it's really true that the film has been authored by the Tibetan people. And I think the proof of that is the connection that you see Tibetans make when they see the film. They recognize it as their own story, not just because it's in their own language, although that's a huge part of it, but because it directly speaks to their own hearts.